Hey everybody, I am Kyle from Fantasy Forge Studios,
And I am Dane, a co-creator of the Everlast TCG.
and we are back with the Heroes of the West Flame Deck Spotlight. So we just launched our first Kickstarter for the Heroes of the West and the Raising of Helix expansions of the Everlast TCG. But today we'll be going over specifically the Flame cards, so you can kind of have an idea of how the cards play, a deep dive on what they look like, and an explanation on some cards from the actual creators of the game itself. So without further ado, we're going to actually go into a little bit of lore as well about each of the locations that this is involved around. And this one primarily is about the location of Calum. And so the way that the sets are laid out is each element is based off of a different kind of locale in the region, specifically in the Heroes of the West in the Kingdom of Helix. And so we actually have a map here of basically the continent of Everlast. This is the world that Everlast has taken place in, and Calum is sitting right here, right off. This is basically the Kingdom of Helix. Most of our cards are involved around kind of this northern part here of this expansive land called the Great Peninsula, but this is the Kingdom of Helix. And right here off of the eastern coast of this large body of water, Loch Calum, is the township of Calum. Essentially, this town is a kind of a pass-by travel town on the way between the northern part of this continent and the southern part, where this is the Empire of Grandium, and most of the trade from the oceans comes down up through here along the main roads, and whether it's adventurers or just other creatures on their journey, they'll stop by Calum in order to rest up before making their way all the way to this location here, which is the capital city of Helix. But the flame creatures in this set are based off of this quiet little community of Calum. And the warriors that may be. And then when the Everlast role playing game does eventually launch, you'll note that these locales are places that your adventuring party will visit once you are adventuring in that world. And so, with that being the case, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the first few cards. So again, this is a Everlast. This is based off of a role-playing game world that we are created, and in the Heroes of the West set, there is a large focus on the adventuring classes that your characters will be first and foremost being the Oblate, and so. In this case, we have the Adventurer Oblate, and it is the art style of the Hiroxan, which is one of the 6 main races in Everlast. And yeah, essentially they are martial adepts, adept in both combat of spirit and combat of will, and physical prowess. In the case of them, they are primarily defender type adventurer creatures. And as you'll notice on this card as well, it is a good creature with the 3 card mark, meaning you can have 3 of them on your battlefield at any given time. They start off with 50 HP. And I guess this is a good time to kind of explain how the flame creatures work, how the flame element primarily is supposed to function, and its strategies that consists through every deck that does have flame element creatures. They are meant to be heavy hitters, essentially. They are designed in a way to where they're a little bit squishy. They have high mana cost, but their attacks are devastating. And in most cases, can one-shot most creatures. They have drop abilities such as Preemptive Strike, which allows you to do damage when you drop them. And additionally, on top of that, they have the ability to have a lot of secondary effects as well and secondary targets to their attacks. So you might see this 4 mana cost as quite high, but they do a lot. They definitely a big key part of this is get your mana generation going on them, and then you can just do insane amounts of damage to your opponents. That's how they work. They're very offensive.
Yeah, one of the wonderful parts about the Heroes of the West, specifically when you have the adventure class for Oblate, is it is a defender type creature. As Kyle had mentioned, things are a little bit squishier, things take a little bit more damage. So the wonderful thing about having the Oblate class as a defender type creature is you could have up to 3 of them in your deck, which is nice. So as a primary type creature, when you play it onto the battlefield, you're able to clog up and start building up some of your cards, whether or not that's building up your mana generation or promoting other cards. So I don't know if it was necessarily intentional with the fact that Oblate being a defender class, but it's a very strong in this. It's very strong in this element because it allows you to kind of bulk up a little bit and defend early on, so that you can actually build some things up and start doing some devastating damage with your attacks.
And this specific primary type creature, we can go into the card and like the text and what it does. It has a trait called Graceful Movement, which negates the basically the downside of a defender versus an attacker, which is it can move 2 spaces instead of 1 space on your turn in the movement phase. And so as long as this creature is on your battlefield, its trait allows them to be able to do that, which is very, very nice. And then its activate ability, it is a primary creature, so it might take you a while to be able to build up this attack, but it has Stunning Blow for its attack action, which the primary target is, and we can go ahead and kind of show you our little battlefield here. I'll move him off to the side. Let's just say you have an enemy creature in like this space here. And your Oblate is in this space here. The primary target, as long as there's nobody in front of them, will be the first creature in the combat lane that it basically hits, and then everybody else on the side. And so you'll see here that you have like 60, 30, 30, 30. If the target creature is here, it'll hit them for 60, and if there are any creatures in this space, and this space, it'll also hit them for 30. As mentioned in the How to Read a Card video, if for example the primary target is the back row, you do not do any damage to your opponent's life points. As secondary target creatures, the damage doesn't apply to life points, only primary type. And so, like, let's just say you have your Oblate lined up in this spot, but there's no creatures in this combat lane. If you do make an attack action, you attack through the combat line to your opponent's hit points or life points, and they lose 1 of their 8 life points, and they draw a card that way. Is there anything else to add about this card before moving on?
No. I mean, aside from it, again, the really cool thing about the world of Everlast, as opposed to other tabletop RPGs, for the adventurers class, you see it as a defender type class, and so you would think it's a tank build. Nope. The wonderful thing about Everlast is every single class promotes into either a defender, a attacker, or a support, which is really, really cool. So I guess we'll get into the next one,
which is our next, so we can kind of put them up for comparison here. The creature that the Oblate promotes to. So there are many options, and the adventurers classes are very different, where the vast majority of creatures only have like 1 creature that promotes from them. As Dane had mentioned, there are actually 4 creatures, 2 attackers, 1 defender, and a support creature. So this is the first attacker, which is the Martial Artist. And so as you see, it promotes from the Oblate, and it has all of the same keywords. It does increase in HP by 20, and so it gets thicker, so from 50 to 70, and it gains, instead of the defender, it gains the attacker keyword. And so this creature just naturally can move 2 spaces with it being, however, it cannot now be turned into the guard position to defend. However, we can go into its trait. It has the trait Counter, which again, traits are always active as long as this creature is on the battlefield. So whenever this creature receives damage from an attack action by one of your opponent's active creatures, before this creature card receives damage, deal the attacking creature 20 damage. So basically it's like a kind of like a retaliate, like a preemptive retaliate. And so if you have a opponent that doesn't want it's basically a attacker that has kind of a safeguard on it, that it's like, if you attack me, regardless of whether your attack slays me or not, like I'm going to do 20 damage to you. Which is pretty strong. So Counter is one of the few traits that are actually in this game that you will see over and over again, kind of a persistent trait. And so look forward to seeing this on a few more creature cards, not necessarily in this element, but spread throughout all the different elements. But in this case, this Martial Artist does have Counter. And then Meteor Punch, do you want to talk about that? It's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's huge damage. So in the realm of Everlast, you've seen the 2 cards that we have out here right now. The primary has 50 HP, and the promoted has 70 HP. Meteor Punch does 110 damage. So it will pretty much, well, it will slay anything in 1 hit that's not an EX. So again, as I had mentioned before, building up your flame element creatures early on behooves you. You deal a lot of damage, but again, high cost at 3 mana. That's nothing to scratch, or that's nothing to scoff at. That's quite a bit of mana that you have to use. However, it is worth it for the devastating damage. However, we can see that on this card specifically, it doesn't affect anyone else with any secondary attacks, so, or any secondary damage. So it's just a one hit 110 damage, but that's really strong for a single attack. I think that's on par with some of the highest attacking or highest single damage in all of Heroes of the West. So it's
Exactly.
pretty strong.
Yeah, it's pretty devastating and it's good. And the nice thing about this is you might be like, well, maybe my adventure Oblate, like he can move 2 spaces, like he has a lot of the benefits of the promoted version of him. Not only does this guy have plus 20 HP, so he's a little bit thicker, he does passive damage to people who attack him, but he also doesn't have as many targets, but he makes up for it with devastating attacks. And so you'll see that's kind of how those synergies work. Our next one is going to be our next attacker type creature that the Oblate can promote into, being the Devotee. Do you want to explain its trait real quick for us? Read that out.
Yeah, I definitely can. So if we're looking at the Devotee, again, it's not a drop, it's a trait. And oftentimes, promoted cards will have a trait. That's not always the case. Some promoted cards do have drops, but most of the time they have a trait. So this specific trait is each time you receive 1 point of damage to your life point total, deal 30 damage to one of your opponent's active creatures, which is good. So
That's any creature.
basically,
So it's not, there's no target to that. It's just choose one of your opponent's active creatures that's active on their battlefield and deal 30 damage to it.
so again, playing off that defensive type retaliatory attacks, which is nice. So yeah, basically if you're getting damage to your life points, you're taking damage. So again, very super offensive with some defense added in. So it's pretty good.
Absolutely. And then we have the attack action, which is Gatling Stones for 2 flame mana, and it's 20 times. And so it is a 1-target attack, as you can see in the right there. And its additional effect is discard any number of cards from your hand. This attack action deals 20 damage for each card discarded in this way. So it's, again, doesn't hit... it has the potential to hit really hard depending on how big your hand size is, but it also doesn't cost as much. And the minimum damage cap is much smaller than the 110 damage. So I guess this one technically could deal more damage depending on how many cards you want to discard. But again, cost benefit, that kind of stuff. So,
yep, perfect.
Which brings us to our next creature, which is the third basically creature that the base generic class Oblate can promote from, which is the defender type, the monk. So basically you're going from defender to defender, so that doesn't change. He can only move 1 since he no longer has his trait graceful movement, but he makes up for that with his trait, which is the Aura of Tranquility. So all of your flame element creatures within 1 space of this creature cannot have attached gear items removed from them by the effects of your opponent's cards. So there are a bunch of cards in this game, whether it's one that I can think of off the top of my head is the Thug, which is a dark creature in the Raising of Helix set, which its drop ability is when you drop it, to remove 1 attached gear item from your opponent's creatures in any way. And that's really strong if you rely on gear items, which they are attached to buff your creatures in some way. As long as one of these creatures is on your battlefield, none of your creatures can have their gear items removed. And so he has that passive effect of he protects your creature's gear.
Yeah, and as you can see with his triple jab attack as well, it's devastating cost. It's 3 flame mana. However, it's still pretty good. It's still 60 plus. So we'll read the additional effect. So move the target backwards until it's in the back combat row. Or until it impacts another creature. Deal an additional 10 damage for each space the target is moved back. So it's very strong if a target is in the front of the combat row. So if it moves back 2 spaces, it could do 80 damage, which is still pretty devastating, especially for a defender. That's a pretty strong attack. So again, if you want to still have a thick adventurer monk out there, then instead of having an attacker type, you can block up 2 spaces if you choose, or you could decide to still do some pretty decent damage, which is nice. So
Absolutely. And also, You'll notice too that because with this being a defender creature compared to the attacker equivalents, they have a higher HP total. So they have 80 where they have 70. And so they increase in HP by 30 as opposed to just 20. So that's another benefit. The last card that promotes from the Adventure Oblate is going to be your support creature, which is the Monastic. Do you want to go over its
Yeah.
drop ability?
So as I had talked about, usually promoted cards have traits. However, this one has a drop ability, and so its drop ability is Saving Grace. So when you play this card onto your Adventurer Oblate, you can activate this drop ability. So search your discard pile for up to 2 creatures and shuffle them back into your deck. Again, really good, really solid, especially since Flame type creatures have low HP. Most likely they're going to be getting knocked out a little bit quicker. So this is a really good drop for getting those creatures back into your deck and playing them back onto the battlefield in due time. So it's pretty supportive. It's pretty good. And again, it really builds your deck back up. Especially if you're playing from behind and you don't have a lot of creatures and a lot of your creatures are going to be being slain. The Monastic is a very good card for helping you get back into the game by getting some creatures out onto your battlefield.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then it has a support action, which, as with it being kind of highlighted in green, that's how you know that it's a support action. But it has Sacred Ground for 1 flame mana. You'll notice that a lot of the support action abilities, they tend to be lower mana cost. Mostly because there is a secondary effect that supporters can do. They can only move 1 space per combat round, like the defenders, but they can't guard like the defenders. And so it's like, well, they're weaker. They have less HP than defenders. They don't attack like attackers. So what's the point? They are your main form of mana generation. And so you can forego doing any actions and you can activate this creature, which is basically turning it upside down, meaning you can't do any more actions for the turn, to add flame mana to your mana pool. And so having creatures that are dedicated to mana generation, that's really good. And so your activation abilities for your support creatures, oftentimes they tend to be not something that you would use every turn, but you would use it situationally. So in this case, you have Sacred Ground. So select one of your active creatures, and then until the end of the combat round, the selected creature gains the aggressive trait. Which the aggressive trait, we actually, on our website, we have a rules guide. At the very last page, we talk about common traits that some creatures can have, one of which being aggressive, which essentially what that is after the movement phase, but before either player starts their turn in the attack phase, a creature with the aggressive trait can make an attack action. And so that's really good. Whether you win or lose priority initiative for the combat round, you can guarantee always attacking from the end of the attack phase. So if you have some creature that's in danger, that's a great way to be able to be like, no, you're going to attack before your creature slays mine.
Well, and after playing lots and lots of rounds of the Everlast TCG at different events throughout Colorado, one thing I will say, aggressive is one of the best traits to have, especially late game. The amount of times, as if, for example, if you unfortunately go second, roll second, so your turn is second. There's been times where if you had the aggressive trait, you could knock out a creature, or you could get that that first punch and land the final KO on an opponent's life points. Which is really, really solid. So having the aggressive trait, especially late game, is super clutch. So this specific activate trait could be really helpful if you run a flame deck, for sure.
And it's also situational too, because there might be times where you might feel like it's more worth it just to get more mana into, as you see the high mana cost for some of these flame cards. So it's give or take, but like as long as you can keep this creature safe for 1 mana, you can give somebody the aggressive trait. So that's all the adventures for the flame. So I know it feels like a lot, and they're unique in a way where they have so many promotions to them. But you'll see with kind of the rest of these Calum specific cards that they only have the 1 promotion, which brings us to our next creature, which is the Calum Man at Arms. So Calum is, as I had mentioned, it is a kind of a fiefdom town that is part of the Kingdom of Helix. And so they have a lord that rules them, but they primarily serve under the crown of Helix. And each of these townships have standing armies and not. The standing army for the kingdom or for the town of Calum are these Calum man-at-arms. And so they are a little bit more than militia, but so they're trained fighters, but they're also not as heavily geared as like the Knights of Helix per se, or even the more promoted versions of these creatures. And so, Dane, why don't you go ahead and explain Preemptive Strike?
Yeah, I mean, well, the first thing we'll look, and the wonderful thing about this card is it has the 3 cards in the upper right hand corner, meaning you could have up to 3 of them onto the battlefield at any given time. And especially with their drop ability, Preemptive Strike, when you play them from your hand, basically what you can do is choose one of your opponent's active creatures and deal it 30 damage. So again, without having to spend any mana, it's a great way to like deal some poke damage when you just play him onto the battlefield. 30 damage is nothing to scoff at. It's pretty strong. And so, especially these
Free
Caleb Men at
damage
Arms,
too.
yes, free damage, exactly.
Not on the attack
Yes,
phase.
true. And especially having only 40 HP, some people may be like, it's not worth having them in the deck. That Preemptive Strike is super strong. I played against a deck that has the Caleb Men at Arms at them in the deck, and it ruins your day if you're if you're not prepared for it. So pretty strong.
Yeah, and with attacker type creatures, they do have 2 movement that they can go per turn, and yeah, they're 40 HP with the kind of their maneuverability. You got to be smart with how you play them, but they are pretty easy to play if you rely a lot on their drop abilities. But their attack action, with them being a attack creature, is going to be their Boar Spear. So it's a 2 mana cost, flame mana, and the primary target receives 50 damage, and the secondary target, which is the target directly behind them, will receive 20 damage. And that's it. It's pretty simple, but for a primary creature with only 40 hit points, its attack does more damage than it has hit points, and so they're pretty strong in that aspect.
Yeah, pretty simple, pretty good.
They promote into our next creature, which is the Axeman of Calum. So Calum is known specifically for their very small and elite fighting force, which are the Axemen of Calum. And they're knights in kind of their own regard without kind of the knightly noble title, but they are very skilled fighters, and they, like I said, there's only a handful of them in the entire town. Calum's not a gigantic city or a gigantic village, I guess, but the best of the best fighters gain this essentially title of Axeman of Calum, which also includes better gear and just better fighting prowess and expertise. Which I guess we can go ahead and start with their trait, which is Killing Cleave. And so if a target is slain by damage from this creature's attack action, remove it from the game, which is really nice if your opponent has lots of like item cards or even drop abilities that allow them to shuffle creatures back into their deck, or allow them to be able to play creatures from their discard pile back onto their battlefields, anything like that. This removes them from the game, and so they're really good if there's like a creature that like you want to have that killing blow to. So
Well, I'm also thinking of future sets without giving too much away. There is a specific kind of creature that allows that
plays the
basically
discard pile.
plays the discard pile quite a bit. And so this specific card would be super, super, super strong against that specific kind of creature. So yeah, I might behoove you to make a Axeman of Calum deck. And he's got nothing to scoff at when it comes to his attack. He's most likely going to be killing some things with a 90 attack power, which is strong. Yes, it comes at the cost of 3 flame mana. However, 90's enough to kill or to slay most creatures in the game. But then it also allows you to get some deck movement as well by drawing a card. So you don't even have to kill the creature; you just have to use the attack, and you are able to get some draw power as well. So very strong.
Absolutely. That's going to be your primary. They are both common cards, and that's going to be your primary, just like 3 card drop attacker line in the flame cards. which brings us to our next, which are going to be your kind of primary defender line of creatures, which are the Warriors of Calum. And so these people are fighters. They're not kind of the man-at-arms, like militia-y force of Calum, but they are like the few kind of just like warriors that are just a little bit better equipped, primarily with shields. Which, yeah, if you want to go ahead and talk about their drop ability.
Yeah, as you can see, it's a primary type creature, so you can play this directly from your hand onto the battlefield. And when you do so, you can use this drop ability, Shield Ready. So this creature is placed onto the battlefield in the guard position, which is great because those of you who know the game of Everlast know that whenever you play a primary creature onto the battlefield, it always starts in the activated position, meaning you can't move it and you can't put it in the defend position if it is a defender class. So the fact that you can place this card onto the field already in the guard position is very, very strong, especially as I had mentioned before, for flame cards, which are slightly weaker as far as their HP goes. So it allows you to clog up some room right away. So it's a very, very strong drop ability.
Yep. And their attack is very simple. It's just a broadsword attack for 50 damage against one target for 2 flame mana.
Pretty good. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, my computer is kind of freezing a little bit on me.
It's all good.
Give me 1 second. All right, which brings us to our Calum Heavy Infantry. This is going to be the promotion of our Calum Warrior. And so as they are not the elite fighting force, but they are your brick house fighting force. They are the ones who you are going to use to plug things up. With 80 hit points, they definitely have a higher HP cap compared to the vast majority of cards in this set. And that is also furthered by their drop ability, Iron Will. So again, when you place them onto your Warrior of Calum to promote them, you activate this drop ability. All of your active creatures with the Calum keyword gain 10 hit points to their maximum hit point total. So if you, for example, had like a creature, let's just say like Axeman of Calum out here, and you had like 3 Warriors of Calum, and you were able to promote all of them while this creature was out onto your field. At the time that this Iron Will drop ability activates, this creature gets 10. So let's say you've already activated 2 Iron Will drop abilities by promoting, and then this guy comes out and you activate the third one. This guy only gets plus 10. Yeah, yep. You only get you. It's only while their other creatures are active that you get it. It's not just a passive trait that automatically applies to everyone. So that's a very important note between drop abilities and traits. Is this always affects at the time that the creature is dropped. And so, yeah, this guy could potentially have up to 90 hit points as an attacker type creature for Flame Element, which is insane, or whatnot. And so this guy can also buff other Calum heavy infantries as well. But then they also have just a 1 creature attack, which is 3 flame mana for 70 damage. So again, decently heavy damage. Nothing too crazy. You have anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, just for a defender type creature, the fact that it can do 70 damage is pretty strong. Even if it doesn't have any secondary effects, it's very, very strong. And by adding the extra 10 HP by promoting the Warrior of Calum into the Calum heavy infantry, it really helps you get over one of the weaknesses of Flame, which is nice. So I guess the only other thing you'd have to worry about is the high attack cost. But yeah, it really kind of negates, which is really nice. So again, the synergy is pretty strong with this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which bring us to our first captain of the set. So there in every set, or I guess element, there are going to be basically 3 captain type creatures, maybe more, but primarily 3 captain type creatures. But 2 of them have EX, and this is going to be our first of those creatures, which is Gala, the captain of Calum. So Gala, a little backstory about her. So she is one of the key NPCs that your adventuring party will come in contact with during the role-playing game. And so you'll be able to see her and how she and basically help her in some kind of mission when that game comes out. Again, I don't want to spoil too much, but she is the captain of the guard, meaning the captain of the Axemen of Calum. And so she is the best of the Axemen of Calum that are present in the town. And she is an attacker type creature, and you'll be able to see exactly why that is the case with Dane. Why don't you go ahead and talk about her specific drop ability?
Yeah, I mean, you can also see as a primary creature, she has 80 HP. So again, that's a kind of a key factor of captains. They typically have a higher starting HP than most other creatures. But yes, her drop ability. So when you play her onto the battlefield, she activates her preemptive strike. And as you see, there's a 50 next to it. So choose one of your opponent's active creatures and deal it 50 damage. Just the fact that you can play this onto the battlefield and deal someone 50 damage, that's especially early game, pretty much guaranteed knockout on most creatures. She comes in swinging, as they say. So pretty
Yeah,
strong, very
even
very
if
strong.
like you play her onto the battlefield and she has to go in the activate position, like that's guaranteed 50 damage, which without any mana cost or anything. Which again, that's another kind of drawback to Flame is like just the high mana cost. Just free 50 damage is very very good.
Mhm.
And she has some survivability with that 80 HP as well. And so just a brief, if you guys haven't seen the how to read a card video, captain creatures, you can only have 3 of them on your battlefield at a time. And in this case, this is one of going to be one of your primary ways to be able to have like a really heavy, strong attacker in that way. And she is a rare card too, and so a lot of the rare cards you'll notice have kind of like the silhouette outline there, so that's kind of an easy way to be able to tell. But yeah, she's one of those positions in your flame deck that's going to be one of those captains that are out on your battlefield. Of your 8 potential creatures that you can have, she's one of 3 of captains that can be out there at once. And then her attack action is just 70 damage. So similar to the Calum heavy infantry at a lesser mana cost, she can just do 70 damage, poke 1 creature, and do her thing. She's very strong, very very strong, very heavy hitter. And then, which brings us to our very first EX creature. So EX creatures are the promoted version of some of kind of the key NPCs in the world of Everlast, and they are specifically exalted. That's what EX stands for, is exalted, meaning they have been chosen by the powers of good or evil, in the case of the powers of good, Alomnium. To represent kind of the heroes of Everlast, specifically in this case, the heroes of Calum. And so she also has preemptive strike, which is the 70 damage. And so her preemptive strike, you can activate it once, and then if you promote her again the next turn, you could do another free 70 damage to any creature that is out there. And so she just wallops back to back with heavy damage. And again, that's free, that with no mana cost.
Mm. One of the key factors you'll see with EX creatures, exalted creatures, is you can see that she has 2 activate abilities. So she's got her normal attack action activate ability, but by being an EX, she gets an extra activate EX activate ability as well, which
And that could be an
only.
attack or support action. It doesn't matter what kind of card that they are.
Yeah. So, Kyle, what are the limitations on using EX activates compared to your normal activates?
Yep, an EX activate can only be used once per game, and that is consistent with the creature. And so, for example, if you have 2 EX creatures that are different, so the other one is Lord Richard, who is in this, the other EX. If you use his EX activate ability, that doesn't mean you're done with activate ability. That just means your card that is Lord Richard, Lord of Calum, he cannot use his EX activate, but she can use hers. And so once you've done that, that's it. That's all you can do for the game, specifically for Gala, captain of Calum.
But it's typically pretty strong. But before we get into the EX activate ability, let's take a look at her actual just normal attack, her attack activate. So deadly swing. Look at that. 4 mana. Very high mana cost, however, at a very big amount of damage. So the primary target, which is again the front creature, will be dealt 90 damage, which again is nothing to scoff at. And then every creature that's behind will get 60 damage dealt to it as well. So it could potentially do devastating damage to anyone on the battlefield. So she's very, very strong. Kyle, do you want to talk about the EX activate?
Absolutely. And I know Max, actually, those who are familiar with the channel, Max has been one of our big playtesters. He actually has a deck that is kind of synergized around Gala. And this next EX activate, he says he feels like it's like one of the strongest like in the game, but He's also a little bit biased because I think he really likes this card. But you have strategic withdrawal, so it is a support EX activate, which means it's used during your turn in the movement phase. And so for 2 flame mana, remove this creature and all attached cards from your battlefield and place all of those cards in your hand. At the start of your turn in the attack phase, you can place this creature and all attached cards onto your battlefield in an unoccupied space, which is great, meaning if she is down to like 10 HP and you are really struggling, and you're going second in the combat round, and you know your opponent has lined up to do the damage and slay your creature, you can use a strategic withdrawal. And so during their turn in the attack phase, they cannot attack because she is in your hand. And if you place her back down in the attack phase, she reheals all of her lost hit points, because that's just kind of part of it, with all attached cards that were attached to her. So if you have any gear items attached in the unactivated position, she can just be plopped back down and basically avoid all damage for 1 turn for her EX activate. It's very, very strong. I can understand why Max likes it so much. And a very important note that I think this is a good kind of point, like it points directly to this idea that you have your exalted rules for EX creatures. And so when you slay just a normal creature, whether it's like just normal Gala or anything like that, you don't take any life points. Basically, like, you use them to defend your life points for the most part. But in the case of EX creatures, when they are slain, you have to take one of your life points. And so they are strong, and they so much so that slaying them is going to do lethal damage to you. And so you got to be careful how you position them and how you use them. She has a little bit of defense with her strategic withdrawal, but yeah, you got to be careful. Especially, again, flame creatures are relatively lower HP costs. And so she has 120 HP, which is the highest that we've seen thus far. But you'll see some creatures with much higher HP as we go through this series, and different elements too.
Yeah. We'll also have an active FAQ. I know some of you TCG experts out there are probably thinking, so you can put her into your hand, you can put her back out onto the battlefield. Did she put it back out into the battlefield in the activated position, the unactivated position? Because she left in the activated position. So that's what the active FAQ is for as well. So any like discrepancies with those specific rules will be put there. So do not worry about it. If you are ever confused about anything, again, let us know. Our Discord's a wonderful place for us to talk about that. But we'll also have an active FAQ to clarify some of those as well. So.
Perfect. Yep. And with that, that is Gala, our first EX. Moving on to our next rare creature, actually, in the Heroes of the West set, which is Kelvic, the Draken Blacksmith. So most of these creatures, so the Kingdom of Helix is primarily a human culture. And you'll actually see for the very first time, you have the word Draken. So essentially, the long and skinny of it, or short and skinny of it, is the Draken are a cursed set of creatures. Back in the first age of Everlast, they sided with the Belial Dragon cult. And part of that is after the Dragon cult was defeated, they were cursed with the likeness of dragons. And so there are 4 different types of Draken, being the Flame Draken, which is what Kelvic is, the Frost Draken, which are, if you guys are familiar with the Everlast role-playing game that we have going on our channel, that's what Yuki is. You have the Black Draken, and then you have the last ones, which are the Bronze Draken. And so there are lots of different kind of Draken, but this is going to be actually the very first Draken card that you'll see, and I think the only Draken card in the Heroes of the West. There'll be much more in future expansions, since this is
there's
heavy
one
focus
more.
on.
There is one other, and
yeah, that's
will
true.
be announced. He will be announced during the Frost set. So.
Technically, there's 3, because you also have
true.
the bards. So, but anyways,
True.
You have this Draken specifically, which is Kelvic, and he is the primary blacksmith that crafts all the gear for the people in the city of Calum. And you can understand why he'll be very, very important for your decks going forward. So he is not a captain, so you can have him on your battlefield with like a full set of captains. However, he doesn't have the 3. He's a named NPC, and so he doesn't have the 3 cards. You can only have one of him per turn. But Dane, why is that?
Why is what?
Why
Why?
is he
Why is
so
he?
strong? That's essentially
Oh,
what I'm
okay.
saying
That's what
with
that's what
his
you're talking
trait.
about. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I thought you were asking me why he doesn't have the captain keyword and he doesn't. I was like, that's a great question. But no, why he's so strong with the trait is because Draken Furnace sounds intimidating. That's because it is. But what it is basically, so while he's active or just while he's on your battlefield, this will just always go into play. But when this creature is activated to add mana to your pool, adds 2 flame mana instead of 1. So basically, if you decide to activate him to generate mana instead of getting 1 mana, you'll be able to get 2, which is very, very strong, especially for flame element that requires a lot of mana. So it's super strong, and you see that with the named character. There's a reason why you can only have one of him on your battlefield. So
And this is
super
also
strong.
something that will be FAQ'd going into the unlimited version of the set. Is this is not supposed to be an attack action; it is a support action. So this will be FAQ, and we'll make sure to let people know that. And it will be fixed in the unlimited version of the game when it does come out. But you have Forge Master for 1 flame mana, which is search your deck for a gear item card and attach it to one of your active creatures. Shuffle your deck. And so he's also good for getting gear for your creatures as well. So yeah, he's pretty strong. He is going to be one of your primary sources of mana generation just on any given turn. And again, Max, I think, can testify to the fact that like it's a very, very strong trait. And you'll most of the time be wanting to use him to activate to generate mana as a support creature.
Yep, very strong. If you can get him firsthand, whoo, you're set up pretty good.
Absolutely. And he's going to be definitely the target of lots of attacks. So make sure you protect him as well. With only 60 HP, he's not super weak, but he's also not like he's one-shottable easily. And which brings us to our next line of support line, the main support line of creatures in the flame section of Calum, of the Heroes of the West, which is going to be our Loch Fisherman. And so, as I had mentioned, this town, one of its primary features is it's off of the largest lake in all of freshwater lake in all of Everlast, which is Loch Calum. And Loch Calum is it is a very mysterious place, but the vast majority of the food that they get from there is they're kind of in a forest, and so they don't have a ton of farming that they do, but a lot of their produce comes from fish. And so there are a lot of fishermen that go out onto the lake, onto the loch, and fish food up. But as you can see, they have 30 HP. They are very squishy, so you must be very careful. However, they do have a trait that does help with that. That gives them kind of a little bit of a defense, which is called Careful They Bite. So when this creature is discarded, choose one of your opponent's active creatures and deal it 20 damage. And so whether that's discarded from your hand, if you are using, for example, like the Oblate, where it's you discard creatures you discard cards from your hand until you and then deal that much damage. If you discard them in any way, whether they're slain or from your hand or whatever the case, just do 20 damage to one of your opponents. So it's basically like a preemptive strike, but discard version of it, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, especially for support, that's very nice because it disincentivizes them being targeted by attacks if they're out there on the field too. So again, you got to be thinking ahead when you're actually fighting flame type element creatures. But let's take a look at the activate. So if you decide to forego getting mana this turn, you could decide to spend 1 flame mana and use Goin' Fishin' as his activate during your movement phase. And so reveal the top 5 cards of your deck. Choose 1 consumable item card, reveal it, and add it to your hand. Shuffle the remaining cards and place them back on top of your deck. So it's good if you want to reshore up your hand. If you're looking for a specific item card, you have 5 opportunities to do so. So feel free to use that, especially if you are really looking for something. So again, deck manipulation supports are really good at that. So
And
yeah,
also
very
too,
strong.
like you sometimes it's good to be able to just have cards that allow you, even whether you draw something from it or not, that just allow you to shuffle your deck back up. Sometimes you just need that shuffle in. Some things you either didn't shuffle right at the start of the game or whatever the case. And so this really does help again with that deck management and manipulation. So it's a pretty good card in that way. It's weak as far as HP, but it has a lot of utility. But it does promote into the Lock Ferryman. And so this actually, the lock kind of is the center of the kingdom of Helix, and it's basically divides the west side of the kingdom from the east side, and the west side is where the vast majority of the farming does happen in the farmland, where the east side is a lot of travel and also kind of forested area. And so in order to get from side to side of the lake, you have your Lock Ferryman. And they do pretty much just that, starting with their drop ability, Back to the Docks.
Yeah, so as you can see, it also has 10 more HP, so it's a little thicker. Not much, but a little bit more. But yes, his drop ability Back to the Dock. So when you play this card to promote your Lock Fisherman, the Lock Ferryman, you may choose one of your active non-EX creatures and return it and all attached cards to your hand. So again, for example, if you have Gala EX out there, you can't use it on her. If you have Richard EX out there, you can't use it on him. However, you could use it on anyone else. So especially if someone's close to dying, if someone's close to, or if you just want to move, make some space. Say you have 8 cards out on your battlefield already, and you just want to make some space, you can feel free to do that. But the nice thing about it as well is that yeah, it's pretty good. I don't know where I was going with that, but it's pretty darn good. It's a drop ability. So you may or may not. So if you don't want to use it, you don't have to use it. So again, key wording is very important. So you may choose. If you choose not to, you can just
Forego
ferry
it.
the lake. Yeah.
Yep. And
And then
the
go
nice
ahead,
thing
go.
about it too is sometimes you just want to free up space. Like if you have like a Lock Fisherman and you're just like, oh, I have something in my hand that I actually want to play. If you drop this down onto your battlefield, because promoting a creature doesn't count as like playing like a primary creature, your one primary creature for the turn. You can like do that, scoop him up, keep him in your hand so you can play him next turn, like the full line, and then play down. Or for example, if you have like a gear item attached that you want to attach to somebody else, you scoop up all of those into your hand, reattach that gear item. There's a lot of utility for the drop ability, so it's pretty good. And then Fairy Transport, which is his support activation ability, which is for 1 flame mana. Choose 2 of your active creatures and have them swap places on your battlefield, which is really good if you are trying to like save someone, or if like you have like a defender creature on one end and like a supporter and they're like really far apart, and even just moving one on space, it makes it really tough. And so that includes activated creatures, unactivated creatures. You could just have 2 of your creatures swap places at the cost of 1 mana, like on your battlefield. It's pretty good. It's situational, but like it definitely can help a lot. And so you could, for example, use this if you are like I have a space that like I have only 1 like remaining life point left, and I know that they're going to poke this and attack it. What you could do is you could be like, all right, I'm going to swap 2 creatures, and then I still have 1 movement with a defender type creature, or I have 2 movements with attacker type creature. And so you can get a lot of movement with this. And so it's pretty nice.
Yeah.
As far as
One
that
thing I
goes.
will say too is, especially by having done a bunch of events at different places and playing a bunch of our EX battle decks, a good way to get good at this game is knowing when to properly use your support activates. And so there's a lot of people out there who's like, I just want to get mana, and they'll always get mana. But you notice the people who tend to win a lot is when they strategically use their activates. So they're there for a reason. Don't feel like they're useless because you just want to generate mana. There are situations in which they could be super, super strong. So don't neglect your activates. Situationally, they can make the difference between you winning a match or losing a match. So
Yeah, like for example, you have the case of Kelvik here with his Draken Furnace. Yeah, maybe it's probably more worth it to do that. But if you have him out there and you generate 2, you might forego generating an extra mana and use one of those mana that were generated to use that ability.
Mhm.
Which brings us to our next kind of rare, our next captain creature in the Flame set, which is Lord Richard, the Viscount of Calum. He is actually the first cousin once removed of King Alexander, which means King Alexander's cousin, this is his son. And so he is the Lord of Calum and still technically part of the royal line, royal family of the kingdom, but he is in charge of the kingdom of Helix. He is basically a young knight in his 30s who has been brought up to be able to run this town. And in the tabletop RPG, you'll notice that he has to deal with all matters, including the training of the military. As I had mentioned, he is a knight as well, so the training of the military, but also on top of that, all kind of like financial like needs and stuff of the town too. And so he'll be calling upon the adventurers for one reason or another to be able to help him in the town of Calum. But he is a defender type creature, so you'll see that he has probably for primary creature the highest base hit points that you will see, which is 90, and so he's pretty thick and pretty strong. And his just normal drop is a drop ability called At the Ready, which is and he is a captain too. That's something important to note, which is search your deck for one creature with the human keyword and place it onto your battlefield in the unactivated position. Shuffle your deck, which is really good to set up your battlefield because, as mentioned before, you can only play one primary creature from your hand onto your battlefield at a time. So you can do this in addition to the one that you do play. So you can potentially get two creatures, and it's in the unactivated position, meaning it is ready to do whatever it needs to do. Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah. And so we're taking a look at his attack activate. So 3 flame mana, so again, pretty hefty, but very strong. So not only does it do a decent amount of damage, but it allows you to really act with synergy in the deck, as we'll explain in a second. So the attack is Golden Roseblade, and it's 60 plus. So the additional effect is you may discard 1 flame element creature from your hand. If you do, deal an additional 40 damage. So again, you may be thinking, man, I have to discard a flame element creature from my hand, but there's cards, if you remember. It's one of the Oblate class cards where if you use the support ability, you're able to put a creature from your discard pile into your deck. It's pretty good. So like if you want to use it later in the game, you can get it back into the deck, and then you can also use other abilities and search methods to be able to bring it back out. So it's not all for naught, but you'd be able to do 100 damage for 3 flame mana, which for a defender type creature's pretty darn good damage.
Yeah, it's really good
so.
for a defender type. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, with this high HP total, it's pretty nice as well. But yep, so that's Lord Richard, and he has an EX that he promotes into, which is Lord Richard, Viscount of Calum EX. Man, the art's so good. But he is also an EX creature, so if you do slay him, it's you take an additional point of damage. And he's 140 HP, which he is going to be the thickest creature in all of the Heroes of the West Flame cards. He has a trait called Charge. This is one of those traits as well that are kind of a more known trait, which basically allows him to move 1 additional space. So he also has the ability now in his EX form to move 2 spaces, so it negates the kind of difference between the attackers and defender type creatures, which is pretty cool. And Dane, Golden Roseblade.
Yeah, it's the same. It's just stronger. So instead of the base damage being 60, the base damage is 80. So you could potentially do 120 as opposed to just 100. And then he has his EX activate as well. So again, you can only use one of these for Richard per game. And so it's 2 mana, so 2 flame mana, and you use it on your movement phase as it is a green activate. So it is called Reform the Line. So at any point during your turn in the support and attack phase, you may rearrange all of your active creatures on your battlefield. So again, it's very good, especially if you want to position your characters. This could be very, very strong the more I think about it, especially if you go second, because you could place creatures based off of where there's holes on the battlefield, and so you could use it to hit life points. You could use it to block incoming attacks from from your defender, and you can use it to retreat from some attacks that may be coming your way as well. So it's super strong, and it basically just allows you to rearrange your entire battlefield. So
Yeah, it's
that might not
basically
sound
it's
super strong.
basically Lock Ferryman plus plus plus.
Yeah. Yeah, it might not seem very strong, but especially late game, it could be the difference again between winning a game or losing a game. So, very strong.
Yep, absolutely. Mr. Richard, which brings us to the last card of the flame elements in the Heroes of the West, which is Sir Benedict, Knight of Calum. And so basically the right hand man of Lord Richard. He is one of the knights that exist in Calum, and he is an attacker type creature, and he also has preemptive strike, and so he's got the same drop ability as Gala, and so he's got preemptive strike 50, which is exactly what Gala does. So as a drop ability, when you play him onto your battlefield from your hand as a primary type creature, he does 50 damage to one of your opponent's active creatures.
Yep. And his battle axe activate attack, is very strong. 60 damage for 3 energy, and then hitting 40 on each of the sides. So he's very good at hitting creatures that are clumped together. So he could be very, very strong against people who synergize by being close to each other. So yeah, he's strong.
Yeah, he's got high HP too. As being a captain, he's got as good or as high of HP as any of the promoted just base creatures, and so like he's pretty nice to have. Still probably squishier than a lot of the other, maybe not as squishy as Kelvic, but still squishier than maybe some of the other element captain type creatures. But again, like the damage potential is very high with him, and so you just got to use him situationally.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Sweet. And with that is going to conclude our Heroes of the West Flame basically card analysis. This will be going up on YouTube. Thanks for those who joined us on the live stream. And we will see you shortly for the Raising of Helix flame card analysis. Until then, may Alomnia guide you.